Welcome everyone. This is another presentation in the subject Introduction to Cybersecurity. And today I will talk about the actors in the cyberspace, which is, I think, it's quite obvious for some times, but it's really worth to just go over on the potential malicious actors, those who are causing most of the threats, and of course, just to enumerate those whose responsibility is to protect the cyberspace. So in the forthcoming 1 hour, 1.5 hours, we will see, I will just go through all the actual threats, all the actors, and we will see that how in Europe and how in Hungary we are treating the potential problems and the potential solutions. So let's start. And let's start with the Hungarian National Security Strategy, which was originally released in 2020 and which defines the role of the government, the Hungarian government, in the cyberspace. The Hungarian government, like all the other governments worldwide, all the other governments who has some kind of a responsibility in the cyberspace, I think that they all treat cybersecurity as one of the key issues in the national security. This is also true for Hungary as well, and maybe that would be a very good question why I do not quote the Hungarian cybersecurity strategy. And the reason is that the Hungarian cybersecurity strategy was issued in 2013, and although it was updated in 2018, 13 the original one, 18 the update version, unfortunately, we are still waiting to the third version of the Hungarian cybersecurity strategy, which is awaited, well, for this year, maybe for next year, we will see. But until then, until we do not get the latest version, it is just really worth to mention the national security strategy, which is the latest one, and which one really defines those requirements or those things, those promises, what the Hungarian government is willing to do in order to protect the Hungarian citizens and the Hungarian organizations from the threats. Welcome everyone. And this is from those threats which are coming from the cyberspace. So the national security strategy of Hungary says that our national sovereignty is an unquestionable fundamental value that is naturally present in our country's foreign and domestic policies. Our primary security policy interest is to protect, preserve and strengthen the self-determination and freedom of action of the Hungarian state in the face of constantly changing circumstances. The security of Hungary and its citizens in all aspects, political, economic, financial, social, technological, environmental, health, military, law enforcement, information and cyberspace is a fundamental value. The creation, maintenance and strengthening of our security is a requirement that is a prerequisite for the fulfillment of all other governmental objectives, as it is written in the strategy. And as you can see, information and cyberspace as potential aspects is mentioned in this national security strategy, which is obvious because even the previous version that was released in 2012 was also mentioned that kind of aspect, although that was a very, very different situation, a very, very different international environment, what we had during that time. So the Hungarian government clearly states that it has tasks to protect the Hungarian citizens. Great, but from what? The question is, are we in danger in the cyberspace? And the answer for that, yes, sure, we are. We are in danger. We are in danger, like, just to extend my previous one, like everyone else. Why? Because the cyberspace, of course, is nowadays a space for the global competition. That is a space where crime can be found in various different formats and in various aspects, but the crime is there. Why? Because there are 5 billion people who are doing stuff in the cyberspace. And therefore, the governments, the countries, the nations should somehow protect themselves from that kind of threats, which is, I think, obvious. But if we just read the daily news, and as I think that is true in all countries, if you just go to the most read websites, to those portals where you can see the international and the national news, I'm pretty sure that you can find at least a few cybersecurity related news from the last couple of days. Why? Because cybersecurity is an issue that reflects to the actual happenings all over the world. That is something that has an effect to the citizens, something that has an effect to the economy and to the society. And nowadays, cybersecurity is interesting for the media and interesting for the population, for the public as well. So just from the news, we can read that cybersecurity is something that should be dealt with. But in most of the times, I got the following remarks, even from those students who are attending the Cybersecurity Master Program at the Ludovico University of Public Service, is that some cybersecurity is something that is very, very technical. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not an IT guy, I don't have anything with the IT. And I used to say that, unfortunately, cybersecurity is not a technical issue anymore. Me as an engineer, back in the old days, 50 years ago, of course that was a technical question, but nowadays this is much more, this is not a technical question. And for me personally, that became obvious in 2007 when Russia has attacked Estonia, and they caused a few weeks long turbulence in the country, just solely purely attacking the Estonian IT infrastructures. And then, as an engineer, my first thought and the second thought and the 100th thought was that as an engineer, I cannot do anything with that, because I'm not someone who is working in the diplomacy. I'm not someone who has an access to all of the resources of the national security. I'm not working for military. I'm just an IT guy sitting next to my computer, and I need to do something without the sufficient knowledge of what will happen. And I think that that was true for most of the countries and most of the decision makers. And it turned out that we cannot really do anything with such kind of an attacks. And that is how it became clear for, I think, for everyone, that without the deep involvement of the countries on the national cybersecurity, the countries cannot protect themselves from an attacks, what has happened in 2007. And I have a motto from here from one of the, I think, best author in cybersecurity, from Bruce Schneier, and I really recommend his books. And he wrote decades ago that if you think technology can solve your security problems, you don't understand the problems or the technology. Cybersecurity was always has an OPP, which is an abbreviation for other people's problem, for decades. But nowadays, this is not true. It's not someone else's problem anymore. This is a common problem, and that is why the countries, the nations, the governments should have a deep involvement into the national cybersecurity. That era, when cybersecurity was purely a technical question, is over. It's not now over, but it was over for 5 years ago as well. And now we are realizing that how things has been changed for them. But who are the actors? Who are causing the problems? And who are the public actors who needs to defend ourselves? First of all, of course, there are various different agencies and actors and law enforcement units, whoever, who needs to protect us. And of course, sometimes those who are causing problems in other countries. They are the state actors. They are the ones who has a legal background to do whatever they need to do. It's like the law enforcement who are responsible, of course, for protecting us from the cybercrime, or the national security services, whose role is to provide intelligence and counterintelligence. And intelligence in that sense means spying in other countries, for example. And of course, in their other roles, they need to protect our nation from other intelligence agencies who are spying in our country. Or we have the armed forces, whose major responsibility is to, protect the nation in case of war. But what happens if the war happens in the cyberspace? And by the way, should they have an offensive capability as well? And yes, of course, they have offensive capabilities, so they might also cause problems in another country as well. And there are the non-state actors like the hackers, those guys who are causing, I think, most of the problems, which is not really true. And the definition of hacker is a little bit greasy in that way. But anyway, there are the hackers, and the most common problem is used to be said by those who are not in cybersecurity is that they are the hackers, or they are the cyber criminals who are absolutely with us and who are trying to rob as much money on a digital way as possible. And we also have the hacktivists, those who are committing their activities supporting some kind of a political agenda, or sometimes just supporting a country. In that case, just think of Russia or Ukraine, because on both parties they have supporters from the hacktivists. And last but not least, there are the users. And most commonly, the major problems are caused by the users. Maybe they are just clicking on an email that shouldn't be clicked. Maybe they are just doing something that causes an outage. Maybe they do intentionally something wrong. But the users who have an access, who have an authorization to do something, they will do a lot of things. And sometimes, so many times, they don't even understand that what is the problem, what kind of problem they caused before. But on a more scientific way, who are the public actors in the cyberspace? And in that sense, I need to quote here a very, very good publication from the beginning of the 2010s that was published in connection with the national cybersecurity strategies by the NATO CCDC, with the Cybersecurity Excellence Center of the NATO in Tallinn, and they collected that who are the major actors. So in that sense, there are the internet governance and cyber diplomacy, where we can see someone in the government who is responsible for the coordination across the whole government or the whole nation, the cybersecurity coordinator. Yes, in Hungary, we have such a coordinator whose responsibility is to coordinate the different kind of actions. But in Hungary, for example, this gentleman is politically not really strong. In other countries, maybe a state secretary is responsible for that kind of governance. So depending on the political agenda of a specific country, that role, that cybersecurity coordinator, is may get a very strong political background, or just some kind of a representative thing. The next player here is the one who is coordinating across whole of the internet-based system. I would say that the CISO, the governmental CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. This Chief Information Security Officer is somewhere existing, somewhere not. For example, in Hungary, this is a non-existing role, unfortunately, although it would be very, very advisable to have this one and to coordinate in the whole, across the whole government. And we have those who are representing the country in the different organizations which are governing the internet, like in ICANN or ITU, security VGs, or IAB or IETF, which is generally the role of the diplomacy board, those who are working, for example, for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In Hungary, for example, we have a cybersecurity coordinator, we have a cybersecurity diplomat who is working next to the European Commission. So depending on the countries, there might be one or some diplomats whose responsibility is to represent the country in the different international bodies. What else do we have here? Crisis management, National Emergency Incident Management Organization, those who are responsible for protecting the critical infrastructures. In case of critical infrastructure, we are talking mostly from a cyber perspective, the critical information infrastructure, and the critical information infrastructure need to be protected by a designated organization. So according to the European legislation, the latest one is the NIS2, for example, it is obvious that in Hungary, the National Cybersecurity Center is the one who is responsible for that. And they are also the National Computer Emergency Response Team, because the National Computer Emergency Response Team should be also appointed by government according to the NIS2 and the previous versions of different cybersecurity legislations, like the European Cybersecurity Act. And there might be the so-called ISACs. What is an ISAC? This is the Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Those organizations who are trying to collect as much information and analyze as much information as possible for a specific segment. So there might be, for example, electricity ISACs and water ISACs and even car manufacturing ISACs. So those organizations who have a deep insight into a specific sector and can support the players on the specific sector from the cybersecurity perspective. From the military, we have the military cyber operation, defensive and counter-offensive. And yes, this is now the role of all, for example, in the NATO, for all militaries who are the part of the NATO. And in the Hungarian Defense Forces, we even have a cyber command, which is doing both the defensive and the counter-offensive operations in accordance to the NATO strategies. We also have, like in all countries, the military intelligence operations. And in Hungary, for example, the military intelligence service is responsible for the military CERT, and they are the military information security authority as well. So following the Hungarian information security role, what is done by the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center for the Civilians, the military intelligence agency is responsible for the same tasks in the Hungarian military. And there might be the military cyber reserve. In some countries, there are such military cyber reserves, like in Estonia, previously mentioned Estonia, the Estonian Cyber Defense League, if I remember correctly their name, sorry if not. But for example, in Hungary, we don't have a specific cyber reserve, although those who are joining to the reserve and have the capability can serve as a reserve for the cyber command, of course. But in some countries, it's a more specific way, it's a more direct way to become a cyber reserve and not just general reserve. Okay, we have the national intelligence and security organizations in counterintelligence. That means that the intelligence and counterintelligence both have some kind of a role in cyber defense. So, for example, in Hungary, the Constitutional Office has also some responsibilities to protect the Hungarian cyberspace. As like all the intelligence agencies, they are trying to identify those threats which are coming from the internal one, and the intelligence office, intelligence agency, which is responsible for foreign intelligence, can have the authority to look around at the foreign cyberspace and find the useful information for the Hungarian government. And counterintelligence as well, the same units are doing that in Hungary. And last but not least, the counter-cybercrime, anti-crime legislation. In Hungary, for example, the Ministry of Interior is responsible for providing laws, creating laws for anti-cybercrime. And as the cybercrime agreement was accepted in Budapest, this is the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime from 2001, we are really proud that we have cybercrime legislation in our national law. ISP code of conduct, how the internet service providers are working. In Hungary, this is maybe the oldest example of how cybersecurity should work in one area. The Council of the Internet Service Providers have, 25 years old or maybe older agreement that how they are providing securely their solution. Government CISO, repeating those who might be responsible for the coordination. If no huge coordination can be found, the government CISO can be responsible only for a tight set of coordination inside that. Cybersecurity awareness. In Hungary, cybersecurity awareness on a national level maybe belongs to the NCSC, maybe not, it's always questionable. but at least we have an initiative called CyberShield. And the CyberShield consists both the NCSC, the police, the Hungarian National Bank, and a lot of players from the civilian field, like usually banks. And they are trying to provide as much information for general cyber security awareness as possible. You can also see here the ISACs, who has a role for a coordinated counter cybercrime, but we can see the cyber as well in general. In Hungary, there are two levels of cyber crime investigation. We have a central unit, which is responsible for the high level, the most complex cybercrime investigations and for international relations. And in all larger police stations, there are some designated investigators whose role is to support the citizens if they suffer from an online fraud, so from the easier cyber crimes. We have forensics organization. This forensics investigators can be also found at the central police unit, and the legal follow-up and prosecution. Of course, the courts and the prosecutors are prepared for cybercrime investigation. And it is not mentioned here, but for example, counter-terrorism is also something that should be that should be done in the cyberspace as well. And in Hungary, the counter-terrorism agency, counter-terrorism center, is responsible for protecting the cyberspace from the different terrorist attacks as well. So, in a nutshell, this is the national system, and now we should just go over on the attack surfaces, which we should just go over that which are the sources of the cyber attacks. And I would start that from the user, because at the end of the day, in most of the cases, we will see that the user error can be found in most of the cyber incidents. Maybe it's just a bad click, maybe it's a bad configuration, but somewhere, sometimes, somehow, a user made a mistake. And that mistake should be corrected somehow later on, and these are causing the problem. But the user is using a software. The software which is programmed, created, developed by developers, and they are just humans. So even the softwares can contain some user specific errors. The software itself is running on a hardware. The hardware is also able to provide errors, problems, which might cause some outages. But the whole stuff, software, hardware, user, and so on, they are creating a complex system. And the complex system itself is setting up a full infrastructure. And at the end of the day, our goal is to protect somehow the full infrastructure. Which are the most common problems? So, like, for example, security challenges, widespread systems, like the PDF readers or the Word, Microsoft Word, and so on and so on. So, the attackers are usually trying to infect the system, get into our systems, get the foothold in the system through a commonly used software. Why? Because, for example, an Adobe PDF file is very widely used. So if the attacker is sending out an email, and this email contains a PDF file, and the PDF contains a malicious software, a malware, and the end user opens this Adobe Acrobat file, this PDF file, and enable the macros in that, what can be seen on the screen. That can be the first step towards a larger cyber incident to an infection. And unfortunately, although the system itself can protect itself through configuration from that kind of clicks, even sometimes the most basic settings do not enable to open such attachments. The user will always solve to get the information, what is not definitely relevant for him or her, but wants to know that what is in the attachment. Sometimes it's just a silly click, sometimes it's a well-prepared attack, but commonly, jointly, we call that social engineering is a problem. Social engineering, when the attacker is sending out that kind of information, and the user is clicking on that. The social engineering is mostly working in case when the user is led to open and click and run those codes which might cause some problems. But sometimes the widespread systems like Word or another PDF itself contains a problem which is called a bug, but if it has a security relation, the bug itself is a vulnerability. And that vulnerability may enable that without any user intervention, the attacker can be successful and can infect the system through a programming error. The vulnerabilities can be exploited with an exploit, and if this exploit doesn't have an update, a patch, we call them 0-day, if nobody knows that this exploit really exists. And the most dangerous ones are those 0 days, which is not known by anyone, but has the opportunity to exploit it remotely and can infect the computer without any user interaction. These are the remote code execution errors or attacks, which is used, for example, by some of the spyware. Okay, another problem, web systems. Because we are using more and more web-based systems, internet-based systems, starting with, I don't know when, but definitely starting with COVID, we started to use most of our services which can be accessed from the internet. What is the problem with that? The problem is that if we can access a system from the internet, everyone else can also access the system from the internet, except if we have a proper protection, like the VPN access, for example. But if a system is on the web, if an exploit is created, so a vulnerability can be found in those web-based systems, that will mean that an attacker, a so-called outage, which is called in that profession DDoS, distributed denial of service attack, which will cause that the system itself will be not accessible from the internet. And there are the custom-built systems. The custom-built systems, which is also used by a lot of companies. So a specific tailor-made software, which is set up by a software developer. And unfortunately, the software development process itself, in most of the time, does not contain the security aspects. Therefore, in such not widely used but specifically set up programs, may cause some issues, some problems that will be never identified by the user, but can be identified by an attacker who has access to somehow to this system. So these custom-built such systems, and I need to mention here the SQL injection, for example, that can be seen on the screen, is also a huge problem, and I recommend you to just check the Open Web Application Security Project, the OWASP.org website, and you will see that how many dangerous problems and errors can be found on that on that field. Okay, we also have the ICS, Industrial Control System. The ICS runs the critical infrastructures. They are not traditional IT solutions, they are special IT solutions. They are using special protocols, so sometimes customized protocols. And as I mentioned previously, customized solutions might contain security problems that were not identified by neither the developers nor the users. Therefore, if the attacker can have an access to the ICS system, it might cause a problem. But those ICS systems are usually managed through general operating system, like from Windows or from Linux, which cannot be upgraded because of safety reasons. Because in that environment, safety is the most important one, so the system should run, and cybersecurity was not an issue because they are rather old systems. So if the attacker could somehow get an access from the internet to such ICS system, not definitely from the for the or to the special systems, but for example, for those updated operating systems which runs and manages the ICS system, that might cause a problem. But how could the attacker access these special systems, keeping in mind that these systems should run in an air-gapped way, so no internet connection? Well, somehow, sometimes in the past, these systems got connected to the internet and unfortunately might have an access. And there is a solution, there is a service which is called Shodan.io, which tries to identify those internet connected ICSs which might have any kind of vulnerabilities. Okay, next one, smartphones and applications. Yes, we have a computer that is always together with us. We have a computer that is rarely updated, or we are just forgetting to update. Okay, it's not true, because in case of iOS, they are always nagging me that to upgrade it. But in case of Android, for example, maybe the upgrades are not as fast and as quick as in case of the iOS. But in general, unfortunately, there are millions of smartphones which are not upgraded and might have a potential problem. But the worst is that these systems are running a lot of applications, dozens or sometimes even hundreds of applications. And those applications, although they might be updated, sometimes they also cause a problem. They might also have exploits. Sometimes they are built up intentionally with malicious intents. Sometimes they are just stealing the personal data and reselling it for Facebook. Sometimes they might have a backdoor. So the applications might have problems. They are just softwares, and if they are used without careful attention, they can also cause a problem. We also have the IoT and the smart accessories. What is an IoT? IoT is the abbreviation for Internet of Things. And yes, you can see the S in the IoT, which refers to security. They are not secure, unfortunately. They are not secure, although they should be secure in the future. But when I'm, for example, thinking on Alexa, which is just a huge microphone that is put on the table in a home, well, when we are afraid about the surveillance of Facebook, just think on that huge microphone on your desk, on your table, which constantly tracking what you are saying. So we arrive today in an era where we are intentionally using devices that are collecting data about ourselves. But unfortunately, these are again just software-based systems. So if something happens with the smart devices, they can be hacked because they intended to be on the internet. And that is why there are huge problems with older web cameras, for example, that can be easily hacked, and not just the video stream can be watched through that camera, but also can be used as a source of a DDoS attack. And if we are thinking on a more complex way, we are building up smart environments, smart factories, smart cities, which are built from IoT devices, millions of IoT devices. And although it is totally acceptable, and I think that these smart cities, these smart factories really should build up because they are getting much more efficient, which is great. And they are providing a lot of value for, not just for the owner, but for the society as well. But if we are not keeping in mind that these smart environments should run in security, well, that may cause a problem, and these kind of problems may cause some kind of an outage in our daily life. So even in a city, even at Budapest, where I'm now sitting in such a city, we should carefully plan always the digital environment, because the complexity is unpredictable, and we cannot foresee the effect of any outage from this smart environment. And last but not least, that is the human factor. One of my favorite cartoons can be seen here. and it says that in this corner we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, etc. And this corner we have Dave. And unfortunately, a lot of Daves can be found, which is in the security, in cybersecurity, we used to say that the humans are so dumb, the humans are not prepared for using the internet, the humans are not cyber aware, and so on and so on and so on. And I totally agree that we should work on building the awareness of the users in the cyberspace. But unfortunately, the human will never be perfect. Unfortunately, there will always be a lot of users who will do something badly. Even me, who is a cybersecurity professional and has 25 years of experience in cybersecurity, sometimes even I do some unpredictable bad things. And although, of course, I can at least identify the mistakes, and I know that nothing can, not all the attacks can be prevented, so I'm able to detect and correct my mistakes. But even I can do some mistakes. So how can we protect that whole 5 billion people who are actively using the internet? So we need to have another approach, and we have to accept that the humans cannot be changed, and the humans should somehow have this one. And I see that I forget to present my presentation. So sorry for those who joined to the presentation before, and just for the sake of curiosity, those were the previous slides. A lot of things have been forgotten. This is the beauty of the online stream. So those who joined previously, I read these presentations. And I did not follow the comments. Hopefully, most of you have been already commented that I forget to present it one, but sorry for that. And I'm checking whether I'm on the screen. Yes. And now I'm not on the screen. Okay, I'm not really prepared for this live event. Anyway, I will just put myself back on the screen. And yes, here we are. Here I am. And here's my presentation. And I'm just checking the chat as well. Please just let me know if I do any kind of mistakes. So if I ruin something, please just let me know. And just go to the online stream, checking if everything is okay. Okay, no live chat. Right, move on. Hopefully with a presentation from this moment. And okay, sorry for the interruption. Let's move on. How prepared are we? What is the preparedness of Hungary currently from this kind of cyber threats? And I need to go back to the national security strategy, which says that the government of Hungary is doing its utmost to ensure the cybersecurity of our country, and we are continuously developing our capacities in this area. Given that attacks against government and other key info communication systems are increasing in number and sophistication, continuous efforts are needed to strengthen the protection of info communication systems. Furthermore, low levels of information security awareness among users are a common phenomenon, although adequate information security awareness among users is a key element in preventing cyber incidents. What does it mean? There are two approaches in the national cybersecurity strategies. One approach says that the government is trying to create an environment for everyone, involving the citizens, involving the NGOs, involving the corporations, the private sector as well, and trying to make this kind of a cooperation not just for purely protecting the cyberspace, but creating value for the country. Another approach is that the government is trying to focus on those parts, on those infrastructures which are really belongs to the country. Hungary decided to choose the second one, and Hungary is decided just to focus on the protection of the governmental systems and the critical infrastructures. And it tries to somehow support the nation, the citizens, to get that kind of cybersecurity awareness. So Hungary treats cybersecurity as a classic defense issue. I mean, not strategic defense, because it's not on the same level as like military or something, but I would say it's a tactical level approach that can be seen in the Hungarian legislation, which is not bad, but it says that cybersecurity is not yet a high-level national security threat as large as, for example, the military-related things. And it is followed by a lot of countries on that way. Okay, legislative preparedness. But why should we do that kind of tactical level defense in Hungary? Well, the answer is that because we need to do that. Because we are the members of the European Union, and we are member states that need to create its own legislation that fulfills the requirement of the European Union. And that is why we have the Act 50 of 2013, which is mandatory for state and local government bodies. By the way, when I have this live, we are waiting for the new cybersecurity law of Hungary in 2024. So this legislation is quite old, but still usable. But it covers the protection, the cyber defense of, besides the state and local government bodies, the critical infrastructures as well. But we have the NIS2 directive. The NIS2 directive, which is mandatory in all European member states, including Hungary. And according to the legislation, the critical infrastructures are protected. In Hungary, there's another law, the Act 23 from 2023, which is the implementation, almost full implementation of the NIS2 directive, is the one which covers the protection of the critical infrastructures, the huge set of the critical infrastructures, because there is a small set which is still covered by the Act 50 of 2013. And moreover, although the NIS2 covers almost 4,000 organizations in Hungary, and maybe that will be more, we also have the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, which is mandatory for everyone who are working with private data. And virtually all organizations have some kind of a task with private data, and they also need to have cybersecurity measures. But why don't we have cybersecurity, information security in case of all countries? Well, the answer is that simply we are not mature for that. And not because of the legislation, because legislation is important, of course. But if we check, for example, the Digital Economy and Society Index, which is created on a yearly basis by the European Union, we can see that Hungary is one of in the third of in this index. So we are simply not mature enough. And we are talking, when I'm saying we, it means neither the human nor the organizations are prepared for that. Of course, there are a lot of large companies operating here who have cybersecurity measures. Of course, there are a lot of very smart people who are working in cybersecurity. But in general, the nation itself, the society itself, the economy itself, the SMEs in general, they are not prepared for such cybersecurity activities. So although they are under the different legislation, although they are under the different rules and legislation, they cannot really prepare for that. And of course, in the near future, cybersecurity will become very similar, like in all the physical security measures, and like everyone has locks and cameras and so on. Cybersecurity will be implemented in more and more companies. But in this year, and the beginning of the 2010s or the middle of the 2010s, we are still lacking the sufficient preparedness of cybersecurity, like a lot of other countries. So we are not Finland, we are not Denmark, we are not the Netherlands, we are like Poland or Slovakia or Greece or something like this. So we need to have more awareness, more investments, more resources, and of course a proper legislative system that will help to build up this for us. Because which are the threats? We have cybercrime. Since the COVID, we have cybercrime in reality. We have tens of thousands of online frauds happening in all years. Just in the last year, in 2023, almost 20,000 online frauds had happened, and these are just the online frauds. In most types of crimes, some kind of a relation towards the computer systems can be identified. So that is why the Hungarian police had set up this central unit, and that is why there are special investigators towards cybercrime in all large police stations, because this is an issue. There are a lot of victims, and somehow the state should do something with that one. And I would say that maybe the hacktivism can also be a problem in Hungary, but in general, it is not a real problem. There are some DDoS against media outlets, of course. There are some threats. Sometimes in some Telegram channels it is said that Hungary will be attacked by hacktivist attacks. But based on the data, we can see that Hungary is not really affected by any threats, any such threats. And the reason why, well, maybe the Hungarian government's good relation with the Russian government is the one that protects us. But if something is changing in the Hungarian politics, we can be sure that we are getting to the enemy side, and we will also be attacked by the hacktivists. So we will see hacktivism is a potential threat, but not a huge threat nowadays. We also have issues with terrorism. I need to state here that cyber terrorism is not really existing. So although it is said in the literature that cyber terrorism can be a problem, it can be seen that no real cyber attacks have been happened because of terrorist reasons. But the terror groups are using the cyberspace for propaganda, for finding new members, for creating or preparing for any actions. So the cyberspace itself should be tracked and should be followed, and should be fined. Any kind of terrorist preparation should be analyzed. And in Hungary, in the last years, for example, 2 young men were arrested because of their connections, online connection towards some terrorist groups. It should be understood that this is a very good way for future terrorists, and that is why it should be tracked. And another threat, whistleblowers. On the screen you can see Edward Snowden, and Edward Snowden is very controversial. Someone says that he's a hero, someone says that he's a traitor, but from the governmental perspective, anyone who is leaking confidential documentation, confidential information, is a traitor, is a criminal. And as more and more people has an access to confidential data, the threat itself that such confidential data will be leaked, and maybe these leaks will be guided by foreign intelligence offices, the risk itself is getting higher and higher and higher. So we need to be aware that these individuals who have legitimate access to confidential data might become a problem, national security problem. And information operations. Information operation, which is a real threat, and according to the European Union's latest publication from ENISA, from the European Agency for Cybersecurity, the ENISA Threat Report 2024, it says that Europe is highly affected by disinformation campaigns, mostly coming from Russia. Yes, it's obvious because it's war and Russia has a long tradition, 100 years old tradition for spreading disinformation, and therefore we should protect ourselves from disinformation operations. And in Hungary, a lot of such disinformation can be read. And this not just because for political reasons, but during the COVID, we could see that how the different conspiracy theories regarding the vaccine is spreading, and all of such materials can be treated as information operations, although sometimes non-state actors are behind these threats. Cyber espionage. There was a hack against the Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs by Russia, which was not something that just happened in Hungary, because just in the same time, although the Czech MFA was also hacked by the Russians, it's obvious because Russia and of course a lot of other countries are trying to gather as much information as possible. This is why the intelligence services are operating, and that is why we should be aware that cyber espionage is really an existing one and happens on a daily basis, and not just the Russians are trying to get information from Hungary, China, or some other countries. Those even who are treated as a friendly country may also have some intention to gather information from Hungary and from the partner countries, because why not? That is their job. They need to get the information. Our job is meanwhile to protect the environments. And cyber warfare. A war is happening not so far from the Hungarian border. So this war has an effect for all NATO members, especially for those countries who are neighboring with Ukraine. And we should have the capabilities to protect ourselves, or if it is necessary, together with the NATO, we should have a counter-offensive steps to protect the goals, the strategic goals of the NATO. So in Hungary, that is why we have, for example, a cyber command. And that is why we are operating that one. So let's have a sum up. What kind of threats can be seen in case of Hungary? And the first one is a scenario that was written by me and by Professor László Kovács, the Vice Rector of our university in 2016. And the title of this presentation was Digital Mohács. Mohács refers to one of the national tragedies in Hungary. And in that one, we wrote down a fictional scenario against Hungary. And it was written based on the experiences of the Russian hybrid warfare in Ukraine and against the different countries. And since 2016, almost all the steps had happened in Hungary, which was written there. So we can predict the future. And based on our scenario, the first step would be a PSYOPS operation, starting with a gossip. A blog suspected to be sponsored by foreign intelligence services publishes news about the alleged weaknesses of Hungarian cyber defense. Yep, not with the cyber defense, but that has happened. The next step would be the distribution. The news on the blog is also posted on social media, so tens of thousands of people have seen it because of previous likes. Okay, let's see the next step. Share on. Sharing through fake profiles created by intelligence experts has led to more and more news feeds being set up and shared. And what is the last step? Highlight. Because of the high number of shares, the tabloid press is also starting to cover the issue, making it public for the mainstream press. And unfortunately, starting with the COVID, starting before, but in the COVID that was extremely bad, we could see that what is the responsibility of the media and how the media is starting to publish fake information, disinformation, because of the fast news publishing, news publishing cycle they don't have the sufficient resources or time to go after a news. And this is very, very dangerous, because even in the social media, we should do something. And that is why we have, for example, the Digital Services Act in the European Union that is trying to somehow control the Facebook-like social media sites by spreading disinformation. But if it happens, even the national media, that is very, very bad. As a next step, we decided to imagine, to hallucinate a DDoS attack. Overload attacks are launched against some government websites and the national telecommunication network, which is called in Hungarian NTG, making some services unavailable for hours. Then some defacement attacks. Some municipal and back office websites are hacked with messages threatening Hungary appearing on the home pages. And then let's assume that there will be some mass data leak. Databases are appearing on the internet which they claim contain personal data of tens of thousands of Hungarian citizens. Well, except the mass data leaks, the other things has happened and happening, for example, the DDoS. I don't know any mass data leak, but I think it's just a matter of time. Okay, as a next step, let's influence the politics. What does it mean? For example, let's assume that there will be some WikiLeaks-like leaks. Government emails come to light under the WhoLeaks banner. The international press is also starting to analyze them. I think that in the next 1 year, knowing the Hungarian internal politics, some similar things might happen. And let's assume that there will be a Hungarian Snowden, a whistleblower, a leaker that hands over a significant amount of classified documents to an investigative journalist, and this package is analyzed by an international team of journalists. This is again something that I think that will happen in the forthcoming 1.5 year before the Hungarian election. And let's assume that there will be an APT. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat and reflects to state-sponsored cyber attack. So in that case, the investigation ordered following previous attacks finds sophisticated malware at a utility company. Malware that's designed to obtain data. The investigation shows that it has been running for at least 2 years. I don't know any public information that has happened, but following the constant notification of, for example, the US government or the UK government, I wouldn't be surprised if this would happen. What can be the next step? Finally, let's attack the basic infrastructure, the critical infrastructure. Let's assume an attack on the telecom services. Attacks against mobile and voice over IP services, making most of them inaccessible. Government communications are also hampered. Defense coordination slows down and stalls. As a next step, let's assume an attack against the financial institutions. Online banking is on hold at major banks. International financial transactions are also suspended. I think that would be the worst, really the worst one. But I have another idea. Let's attack on electricity suppliers. There are local district level power cuts. This affects the population and public institutions. That has happened in Ukraine, and that just after our publications in 2017, for example, by NotPetya. So such attacks are feasible, and such attacks really fits into the tool set of hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare, which we will talk later on, but before we talk about that one, let me share our thoughts on the actual threats. Because in this year, together with my colleagues, we have created a study. The title of the study is Digital Mohács 3.0. And we made this research by asking some key leaders in the Hungarian cyber defense, and then evaluating their feedback with hundreds of cybersecurity experts, just to analyze, just to find out that which are the strategic threats against Hungary, which are those threats that can launch targeted cyber attacks, or bulk and targeted phishing, which reflects to the attackers send deceptive emails to the masses or to well-chosen targets to obtain access credentials, for example, username and passwords, large-scale sensitive data leaks, the contents of a database containing a large amount of sensitive data For example, personal data become publicly available as a result of improper operation or cyber attack. Targeted state-sponsored cyber intelligence operation. A state-sponsored intelligence group conducts a complex operation against Hungary to obtain classified information affecting the Hungarian and allied systems. Distributed service attacks against critical services. A logical attack that overloads one or more servers of an IT system with massive service requests, making it difficult for users to access the system or even leading to a complete server shutdown. Availability disruption of utility services, partial or complete outages in utility services, for example, internet service, electricity service, etc., due to interdependencies, render other key digital services unavailable, or presence of unsupported infrastructure in critical services. Critical services use software systems for which the vendor no longer provides security updates, leaving them vulnerable to known vulnerabilities until the end of their life cycle. Infection of government systems. Malicious code and spyware are installed in Hungarian government IT systems, which due to their technology can only be completely removed if the entire infrastructure is reinstalled. Overuse or lack of use of encrypted communication channels. The widespread use of encrypted communication channels, for example in chat applications, significantly complicates the investigative work of law enforcement agencies, while at the same time, when sharing sensitive data, communicating parties often fail to exploit the potential of encryption solutions available to all, thus violating the confidentiality of data exchange. Critical infrastructure cyber attacks. A nation-state actor or cyber criminal group launches a cyber operation against a Hungarian critical infrastructure that negatively affects the integrity or availability of that infrastructure. Exposure due to cyber defense technology gap. Organizations in Hungary are unable to use the latest cyber defense solutions due to a lack of funds or capabilities and are therefore more exposed than those organizations where they do use these technologies. Exploitation of vulnerabilities in industrial systems. Attackers exploit software vulnerabilities in specific industrial IT systems, thereby compromising critical infrastructure. IoT and IIoT vulnerability exploitation. The attackers infect smart devices in the home and industry in Hungary with malicious code by exploiting software and configuration vulnerabilities, thereby compromising the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of these devices and the data stored on them. Creation of IoT-based botnets. Infected smart devices are organized by attackers into larger networks, which are then used for more serious cyber attacks, for example, distributed overload attacks, thus involving Hungary as a source country in cyber attacks against other countries. Zero-day presence vulnerabilities in critical systems. Software flaws are present in electronic information systems for which there are no fixes, and often these flaws are not known to vendor, but there are exploits through which unauthorized users can gain access to the systems. Social engineering attacks. An attacker does not exploit technological vulnerabilities but seeks to deceive a user. The deception results in the authorized user providing the unauthorized person with confidential data or opportunity to access his or her own or his or her organization's systems, specifically because of the deceptive behavior of the person performing the psychological manipulation. Mass online fraud. Fraud for economic purposes is moving en masse to online platforms and commercial sites, with more and more Hungarian citizens becoming victims of fraud. Lack of digital literacy and cybersecurity awareness. Hungarian citizens generally have low levels of IT security skills and lack basic cyber hygiene awareness, leaving them vulnerable to cyber attacks in their personal or professional lives. The emergence of and socialization of organized cybercrime. Hungarian citizens can easily join foreign organized cyber criminal groups, use their offensive infrastructure in exchange for language and local knowledge, thus making Hungarian organizations and citizens even more exposed to cybercrime. Sorry for reading that, but I think that it's valuable, so I will comment it after the 23rd one. So, mass malicious code infections. The mass deployment of malicious programs that have significant impact on national cyberspace by violating the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of infected endpoints and data stored on them. This includes ransomware. Attacks by cyber volunteers or hacktivists. A hacktivist is someone who is involved in a cyber action organized around a political ideology that has an impact on the physical world. They typically commit the act in groups, often not even knowing each other, even from very different geographical locations. Hacktivist act is typically limited to distributed over the distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS, website defacement and data theft. Lack of domestic and European cyber defense industry. Hungary is forced to source even its most critical cyber defense systems from outside Europe, so there is no guarantee that a product does not contain a backdoor, for example, or that it's possible to tailor a solution to specific needs of national cyber defense. And that will be the last slide, what I'm reading. The emergence of cyberspace effects of geopolitical tensions. Hungary is a collateral victim of cyber attacks accompanying conflicts such as those between Israel and Iran or the US and China. The proliferation of cryptocurrencies and other innovative payment solutions in the monetary system, the widespread use of cryptocurrencies and other innovative payment solutions, for example, Wise, Revolut, etc., makes it very difficult to recover stolen assets in the event of cybercrime. Limited information sharing among domestic stakeholders. Due to inadequate legal mandates and unclear responsibilities, key information is not shared among domestic key stakeholders, so that relevant Hungarian organizations are not always informed in a timely manner about cyber attacks, threatening them and the details of the incidents that have occurred. In the absence of a functioning information sharing analysis center, even a framework for sharing information within a defined circle based on mutual interest and trust is lacking. Limited information sharing among international stakeholders. Due to the insufficient level of trust, key information is not shared within the NATO and EU alliance, so Hungary and the Hungarian organizations concerned are not informed in time of cyber attack, threatening them. Compromise of trusted components. The security of trusted hardware or software components is compromised, for example, CPU, TPM chips, digital identifiers, etc., that are difficult or impossible to replace, and thus the security of the systems relying on them is not sustainable. Supply chain infiltration by adversarial countries. Countries adversarial to Hungary and its allies influence key digital services, software and hardware, for example, by legislation applicable to companies operating in their own territory, or by hidden acquisitions in seemingly neutral companies, in such a way that confidentiality, integrity and availability of the data they have to manage may be compromised. Lack of consistent protection of domestic hardware software supply chains. Exploitation of vulnerabilities in hardware software supply chains is a growing trend worldwide and is not even avoiding Hungary. The varying level of knowledge and implementation of foreign best practices, which is basically insufficient, is becoming a risk that is increasingly unacceptable in the face of growing threats. Attacks on digital supply chains. Attacks on key technologies such as cloud services that compromise the integrity or availability of a wide range of electronic information systems. Use of AI in cyber attacks. The production and widespread use of widely available AI-based solutions such as deepfakes in state-sponsored cyber attacks and cybercrime tools. Targeted psychological operations against Hungary. Method designed by a state actor to convey selected information and indicators to a specific target group in order to influence their emotions, motivations, and subjective attitudes. And last but not least, general disinformation. This refers to misleading and deceptive information deliberately created by a non-state actor in an attempt to pass it off as true information for profit or deliberate damage, mainly through social media. So, just going through all these strategic threats, and all can be imagined in Hungary, and not just in Hungary, because I think that's also true for most of the countries. Is it a technological problem? Is it our problem? And the answer for that is that no, this is not our problem. I mean, this is our problem. This is not a technological problem. This is everyone's problem. This is a state problem. This is the problem of the leaders. This is the problem of the managers. This is the problem of even the citizens. This is all the problem for all of us. And if we want to protect ourselves from the threats of the cyberspace, we need to set up a well-functioning system, national security system, that aims to protect the citizens from the threats and aims to protect the organizations in a country from such kind of threats. So unfortunately, in the future, I think that more and more cybersecurity will be needed, and I made a few errors, not forgetting to show my slides, for example, or just reading long text. I'm sorry for that. Maybe next time I will be much more successful with this online presentation. But for today, thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let me know. I will now just go to the online version of this video, and I will just check the chat if there any question. I don't see any questions. I don't see anything, but if in the near future, if you're just reviewing this record, and if you have any question or comment, please feel free to do that. For my students who are in a direct connection with me, if you want any questions, just write me an email. Let's discuss it during our next class. But for today, thank you very much for your attention. Join me during the next session. It will be much more professional, I promise. But anyway, if you liked that presentation and you think that it was useful, feel free just to click on the thank you button and give me some money for coffee, I would say, and just encourage me to do such videos in the near future. And of course, you can reach me through LinkedIn, through comments on my Facebook site, etc., etc., etc. And just let me know what else are you interested in cybersecurity. Thank you very much for your attention for today. See you in the next occasion. Bye-bye.